Lanny Davis is joining us now, Michael Cohen's attorney and former special counsel for President Clinton. Lanny, great to have you. Here we are an hour away from this cross-examination. This is going to be a big moment in this trial.
Yes.
Day 17 of it, by the way, but who's counting? So what happens next?
Well, I just sighed because of the memories of the night before the testimony on February 27th, 2019, live under oath on national and international television with none other than Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, future chief of staff to, of course, President Trump. And that was a tough experience because he was being provoked without a judge there to try to be the arbiter of fairness. And he was attacked. There was a sign on the wall that said, "Liar, liar, pants on fire." So he's been through this pretty badly once. And then the second time, cross-examined by Trump attorneys in a courtroom, was the New York Attorney General's financial fraud trial. It was pretty vicious and pretty tough, and he held his own. But I hope today he will be, as we discussed 2 nights ago, quiet, direct, own his lying, own his sins, and then answer the question.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that's the case, because I've had some phone conversations with Michael Cohen where you challenge him a little bit and he turns vicious from time to time. I want to play what Speaker Johnson said about your client in the 10 o'clock hour this morning. Listen here.
This is a man who is clearly on a mission for personal revenge and who is widely known as a witness who has trouble with the truth. He is someone who has a history of perjury and is well known for it. No one should believe a word he says today. He lied to Congress, he lied to the IRS, he lied to federal election officials. Even Cohen's own lawyer testified to a grand jury that he is not reliable.
So what about that? And I wrote this down, Lanny, to make sure I get it all included here. He lied to Congress, lied to the media, including me, lied to Mueller, lied to the FEC, lied to the IRS, even lied to a bank to get that home equity line of credit. And he's a convicted felon who spent time in prison for all of those lies. Why should the jury believe a word of what he's saying now?
Well, first of all, the jury has to make its own mind up whether somebody is capable of owning lies and turning and telling the truth. And the story of redemption, which Elijah Cummings in the committee that he chaired on live testimony pronounced that at the very end of the hearings in a very moving way. But it's pretty rich for the speaker to talk about lying when he's the supporter of one of the biggest lies of all, which is not accepting the defeat by Donald Trump. And of course, there was no lawyer testifying in front of a grand jury. This individual that the speaker just referred to was not Mr. Cohen's lawyer. So Mr. McCarthy, having just survived Marjorie Taylor Greene, looks like he's stretching the truth to be partisan the very time that partisanship shouldn't be addressed. So right now, we need the jury to be left alone and not to have a partisan, cheap attack by that individual. Wouldn't be speaker without Democrats supporting him, and that's a little rich for him to be out on the courthouse
Although
steps.
McCarthy, I think you meant Johnson, McCarthy would still be speaker if the Democrats...
Did I say McCarthy? Well, the two of them are very similar, but I meant Mr. Johnson.
All right.
Lanny, I was fascinated preparing to speak to you today, looking back at some of the things you've said about preparing Michael Cohen in the past, particularly his testimony before Congress in 2019, and how the entire point of the prep was to teach him to keep his cool and how he struggled to do that. I wonder what insights you can give us about how he prepped for the moment that is about to happen at 2:15 today.
Yes, first of all, let's all identify that it's not just Michael Cohen that has a hard time keeping his cool when he's being personally attacked. And under these circumstances, it's not going to be easy for the rest of the cross-examination. But he raised himself up, and he stood up to the challenge and testified before Congress and then in the AG trial. Now, where is Mr. Trump? He promised he would testify. Did Speaker Johnson remind Donald Trump that he promised he would testify on this channel of all, with some Trump supporters watching? Do you take Donald Trump at his word? He gave his word he would testify. So maybe this is the day I'll repeat that. Mr. Trump, I welcome you're doing what Michael Cohen is willing to do. Stand up and tell the truth.
Lanny, let me get to one of the points here of the trial itself, and that is whether or not Trump was acting on advice of counsel when he listened to Michael Cohen. So Cohen cooked up the payment schedule of these retainer payments. I guess with Alan Weisselberg, that we don't know, he's in Rikers Island and he's probably not going to testify in this. But if Michael Cohen cooked up the payment schedule, then just got Trump's sign-off, is Trump acting on advice of counsel? Was it Cohen who actually did something illegal, and how would that illegality transfer to Trump?
Well, there's a legal defense called advice of counsel, but it's extremely difficult and very rarely applied because you have to be an innocent and rely on counsel. And for Donald Trump to prove to anyone that he's an innocent relying on counsel would be rich, as I just said about Mr. Johnson. I keep thinking McCarthy. But let me at least address your question, which is the Weisselberg piece of paper that I first saw over a year ago when we were first being presented with all the evidence and preparing for this, is very, very damaging to Mr. Trump. It's in Weisselberg's handwriting, so even though he's not testifying, it's admissible, has been admitted as evidence. The jury, I promise you, will be looking at that piece of paper. On that piece of paper are all the amounts that add up to $430,000, including the $130,000 to Stormy Daniels. And then divided by 12. The President of the United States in the Oval Office, we've had testimony undisputed, wrote checks out for $35,000 a month from his personal checking account. Can you imagine if a Democratic president, what would the Speaker be saying today if it was a Democratic president who wrote out checks from his personal account for hush money? So right now we have very devastating evidence from Weisselberg in his handwriting. He's not going to testify, but that will be seen by the jury as evidence that these were not legal expenses.
So you sure he's not going to testify?
I am told, I'm not sure of anything when it comes to Mr. Weisselberg, but I'm told that he's not going to testify.
Okay, so Lanny, if I could just get your reaction to something Jonathan Turley wrote in the hours leading up to this cross-examination that will begin 1 hour from now. He asked the question many of us are asking right now: how bad will this cross-examination be for Michael Cohen after lying to Congress, courts, banks, and most everyone else? He writes, "It will be bad. On cross-examination, Cohen faces a reckoning of biblical proportions." Can we get your last thought?
Well, I know Jonathan, and he does tend to use metaphors like biblical proportions. Let me remind you, in the AG trial, it may have been non-biblical, but it was pretty severe by the Trump attorney in cross-examining. What did the sitting judge write after that cross-examination? That he found Michael Cohen credible. So whatever they throw at him today, if he answers calmly and directly, the jury will get an impression that I believe Judge Engoron got, that he is credible.
All right, that's what we'll be looking forward to.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Lanny. All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.